Today we're going to make cocoa bean brownies, part of the Healthy After School Snacks series, where we make things that kids love and that are nutritious and delicious. So, cocoa bean brownies have a secret ingredient, and that is beans. And I usually use canned beans because they're quick and easy and convenient. There's a variety of beans that you can use. Pretty much it doesn't matter what kind. I've made them with red kidney beans and black beans side by side. Couldn't tell the difference. But today we're going to talk a little bit about navy beans. There are light colored beans, small, pinto beans, red beans. They're very similar. Then we have the kidney beans and the black beans. And when I was in the store today getting these things, I was of course reading the labels like we all do. And the cheapest kind of kidney beans had high fructose corn syrup added and sugar and a lot of stuff that I didn't want. So I didn't get those, but just be aware that you can get stuff in beans that you don't want. You can also end up getting seasoned beans, and those won't work in this recipe. The other thing that I want to mention is that organic beans typically have about half the sodium of the other canned beans, and that may or may not be important to you. You can also get no added salt canned beans that are very low, like 15 milligrams of sodium per serving. I think they taste kind of flat, but they're there if you want them. Or in this recipe you could also use your own cooked beans from dry, and you could do that just on the stove, like as many people do, or with a pressure cooker, which is what I do. And there are other classes that show you how to use a pressure cooker and how to cook beans specifically. If you're using your own canned beans, substitute 1.5 cups of beans for the recipe that we're doing today. Okay, today I'm going to use the navy beans just because I want to try it with lighter beans. See if that makes any difference. We'll dispense with all of those. Another super important part of this recipe is the cocoa. And cocoa is very healthy for you. It turns out it has more antioxidants than red wine or green tea. So I hope that you will let your kids enjoy things with cocoa guilt-free. Now there's several different kinds. There's natural cocoa and there's Dutch processed cocoa, which is treated with alkali. When it's treated, it makes it a lighter color and reduces the antioxidants a little bit, but any of these will work equally well in this recipe. Also, when it's treated with alkali, it makes it a little easier to mix with liquids, like if you're making cocoa. So we've got a couple kinds here. This is this Hershey Special Dark, which is also a blend of natural and Dutch processed. It's quite dark. Then we have the Seiko brand, which is a blend. And then we have the Scharfenberger brand, which is all natural, which is really lighter than all the rest of them. So sometimes it's just a difference in the cocoa beans that they use and the processing. But anything that you have available will work for you. But you want just cocoa powder. You don't want hot cocoa mix that probably has sugar added to it and maybe some powdered milk or non-dairy creamer added to it. Those things are not what you want in this recipe, and then you won't get the really strong cocoa flavor from this. So we'll dispense with all of these things. We will need to drain the beans, and so I'm going to use this really fun, you'll be amazed at what gets you excited in the kitchen. This is just a really nice can opener, just a plain old everyday can opener that cuts here instead of here, and so you don't get the sharp lid. You don't cut yourself with it. I got this from a conference. But I know they're available too. Alright, so I've gone around. I can feel where I'm now going in a spot that I've already cut. So I open it up and see this isn't sharp. That is cool. Especially if you're cooking with kids. Alright, so we're going to have to drain this. You can drain and rinse, but you really don't need to rinse. Rinsing can reduce the sodium in a high sodium food if that's important to you. But I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit, get this stuff out of the way. And then tell you that it is also super important before you start this recipe to turn on your oven, which I've already done. We want it at 350, and it's there now. You don't want to make this recipe and then go, oh, I gotta turn on the oven. You have to have the oven hot when you put this in. The other thing is that it takes, I don't know, 20 minutes or better for your oven to warm, and as soon as you open that door, the temperature can drop by about 50 degrees, so you really want it ready to go. Other thing is that if you're having trouble with your oven, buy an oven thermometer and check the temperature. We cook in a lot of people's kitchens, and we had a wonderful client who kept saying that it took a long time for her stuff to warm in the oven, and we determined finally that her oven was off by 50 degrees. It was 50 degrees cooler than it was supposed to be, so that was a big problem. Alright, so we're going to let that sit for a minute. We're going to put all this in the blender, and you will see 5 minutes and this thing's going to be in the oven. Okay, a few words about my blender. This is a KitchenAid blender, which I love because it has a wider base here than lots of other blenders. That means that the food turns better. The skinny ones, the food turns on the bottom and the top just doesn't turn around and get caught. So if you're in the market for a blender, I like mine with this wide base. I also like a pour spout. You'll see that that's nice too. Alright, so these have drained sufficiently, and they're going to go right in here like so. And then we are going to put in 3 eggs, and I'm putting these liquidy ingredients on the bottom. That also helps it to turn. Alright, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now I have egg on my hands, so I'm going to wash that off. And around, quick. Alright, next thing up is 1/2 cup of cocoa. So I am going to use a dry measuring cup. This is a 1/2 cup. And I might need to open another one of these, but maybe not. Alright. Okay, so the way you measure dry ingredients like cocoa or flour is level right up to the top. So a little more. And then excess can go right back into the container. Alright, so that is 1/2 cup of cocoa. And we need then a 1/3 cup of canola oil. Now, you can either use a dry measure like this, or a liquid measure would be better, like this. A liquid measure, you've got some room over the top of your measure so that you can walk across the kitchen and not spill it. Alright, so I'm going to use this one, and this one you have to get down close. Okay. You have to get down close to see where the line is, to make sure that the oil, the line of the oil is where the mark is for 1/3 cup. And it's right there. And you couldn't see that by looking down on it, on this kind of measuring cup. Okay, so there's the oil. And we'll clean up our mess a little bit here. And then we need a cup of sugar. I have made this for a really long time with white sugar. And then I used a cup and a quarter, excuse me. And I personally could do with a cup, but a lot of people like their sweeter. But today we're going to use brown sugar, and we're just going to use 1 cup because there's more flavor in brown sugar. You get a nice caramely flavor, and you measure brown sugar by putting it in your cup and pressing it down so that it reaches the top. So there that goes. Another reason why I've started to prefer dark brown sugar is that it has more antioxidants than white sugar. Of course, white sugar has none. But brown sugar actually isn't too bad, and you know, every little bit helps. Okay, and then the next thing that we have is a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Now, there's also baking soda. Make sure you're using baking powder. They're different. Okay, 1/2 teaspoon is 1/2. You measure this. Go like this, like high over the top, and then just drag it across, and that's a 1/2 teaspoon. Alright. So, clean up as you go. And I plopped out some cocoa. Alright, so here we go. We're going to turn her on. See it turning pretty well. I am going to scrape it down because there's some dry cocoa there, which would eventually catch, but you know, who wants to wait that long? Alright. And then try to keep the mess to a minimum. There we go again. Alright, that's good. It doesn't really matter if this is completely mixed in here because it will stay in here and not in your brownies. It doesn't hurt to do that either. Okay, so then we have a pan. I'm going to wipe up my counter a little bit. And you can use a variety of different pans depending on what your purpose is here. Today we're making brownies, so we're going to use a square pan. Okay, so you can use a square pan for brownies. It doesn't matter if it's glass, this is an 8x8 glass, or metal, this is a 9x9 metal, either one will work. Or if you want to be fancy and make a cake, you can use a round, either round pan. This is about 8 inches, this is about 9. And then you can cut it into wedges and serve it like a fancy cake and put a sauce over it like raspberry or strawberry or caramel or peanut butter or orange. Or you can also make a double batch and then make a 2-layer cake, or just make a single batch, cut it in half, and put your topping over 1/2 and put the other half on top and frost it. So you can have a fancier presentation. So we're going to spray the pan, and I'm going to use this pan today just because I feel like it. I'm spraying with a cooking spray that has no flour in it. Most of them are gluten-free. You do have to watch out though for Baker's Joy is a brand that has flour added to it. You obviously can't use that. So we sprayed that. We take our batter and we go right into the pan. How easy is that? The other thing, there's no xanthan gum in here. I mean, these are all inexpensive, easy to get ingredients. And you won't believe it how good it is. Alright, into the sink, into the oven for about 40 minutes, and set the timer. I always like to set the timer, or otherwise I forget it. And a lot of times I have a lot of beeping going off in my house. And I say, what was that? Better check the oven or the dryer. So there you go. We'll be back in 40 minutes. Okay, 40 minutes is up. Can you hear the beeping? Just a minute. Beep. There you go. Alright, so I'm hitting the timer button. I'm taking it out of the oven. Ooh, warm. It smells wonderful. Alright, now this is plenty done. I'm going to turn off the oven. And we're going to let this cool a little bit. It will sink down as it cools, and it'll get very, so rich tasting. So we're just going to now let it wait for a little bit, and then we'll come back and cut it in 15-20 minutes probably, maybe longer. Okay, we are now 15 minutes later and turned off the timer again, and the poor cameraman is having such a hard time waiting. He suggested before we could eat it with a spoon, which I don't think was necessary then, but I still did want to wait. So anyway, now it's cooled for half an hour, and certainly you can bake these ahead and cool them completely, but we really want to eat them. so here we go. So I'm just going to cut through. And you can see again, they've shrunk a little bit more. You can see they're very easy to cut, and probably that's not a big enough piece, but we'll stick with it. Here, that's what I want. Nice little spatula. Okay, so here we go. You can see they come out nicely. You can see that they're beautifully nice and moist. And I should have the cameraman come up here and eat some. I'm gonna. If he's too shy, I'll eat some. Yummy.